Imagine a library of forgotten knowledge, locked away, its pages whispering secrets that could unravel our modern world. These aren't just old stories, they're suppressed accounts, intentionally removed from our collective memory. We're diving into the ancient texts deemed too dangerous, too powerful, to ever see the light of day. Are you ready to face the truths they tried to bury? They say history is written by the victors, but what about the stories they didn't want you to read? Picture ancient scribes painstakingly documenting realities so profound they were deemed a threat to established power. Just about dusty manuscripts. It's about the deliberate suppression of knowledge that could change how you see everything. Join us as we crack open the forbidden vaults of the past. Here is the question that will guide us tonight. What makes a book so dangerous that entire empires decide it should vanish? And when a page is torn from history, who gains that power and who loses their voice? The idea of a forbidden text isn't a myth, it's a choice. It's a door closed by human hands. A book becomes dangerous when it contradicts the stories a society tells itself about God, about kings, about who gets to speak and who must remain silent. And what we accept as truth is not always what survives because it's right. Often, it survives because it serves. Picture a council hall lit by oil lamps, bishops and bureaucrats arguing over which books belong, which do not. In another century, a ruler orders a purge of heretical writings that threaten his legitimacy. Elsewhere, monks copy a page through the night, knowing that by dawn, soldiers might burn what they've made. Time and again, decisions are made by those who sit nearest the throne. Deciding the canon is a gatekeeping act. It brings order datrot clut, but it also silences the texts that don't fit. Those that offer alternate maps of reality are pushed to the margins, buried in jars, smuggled in satchels, or scraped away to be overwritten by safer prayers. And yet the words endure. Because truth has a way of surviving in whispers. Let's walk into one of those whispers. An Egyptian winter in Ichen Jubite Sister Wu. A farmer named Muhammad al-Saman swings a pick at the base of a cliff near Nag Hammadi. The blade strikes clay, a red sealed jar. Inside, wrapped in leather, are 13 ancient codices, their pages thick with Coptic script. He could not have known that he was holding a counter-history, voices thought lost, exiled from the cathedral and the court. We now call it the Nag Hammadi Library. Open those codices and a different Christianity breathes out from the dust. Not a rival faith so much as a rival lens. In these Gnostic texts, the Gospel of Thomas, Philip, truth, the divine is intimate, found within. Salvation is not a single event secured by authority. It is knowledge, gnosis, a waking up to the spark inside the human soul. Here the cosmos is layered, a distant, ineffable source, emanations of light, and a lesser creator, often called the demiurge, who fashions the material world while mistaking himself for the highest God. In that world, suffering isn't merely punishment, it's a symptom of a cosmic mistake. And redemption lies in remembering who we really are. You listen to the cadence of the Gospel of Thomas, a collection of sayings attributed to Jesus, stripped of narrative, sharpened to a blade. The kingdom is inside you and it is outside you. Split a piece of wood, there I am. These aren't parables offered from a pulpit. They are sparks meant to ignite the listener. The Jesus found here is not an emperor's emblem. He is a teacher awakening exiles. What makes a manuscript like this forbidden? It challenges the gatekeepers. If the divine lives within, if salvation arrives not through hierarchies and altars, but through inner knowledge and a direct unmediated encounter. Then the scaffolding of worldly power trembles. Imagine the unease this caused in the 4th century, as bishops sought unity, as emperors sought legitimacy through a single coherent doctrine. Some debates were theological, many were political. When the bishop Athanasius, in a letter written in Sembite Loshati, listed the books to be read in churches, he also warned against those he labeled apocryphal. What happens to a book when a shepherd of souls says, "Do not read this"? You hide it, or you burn it. Scholars believe the Nag Hammadi books were copied in the 4th century, perhaps by monks. Maybe they were stashed in that jar because edicts demanded such writings be destroyed. Destroyed. Maybe a scribe, hands stained with ink, listened to footsteps outside and chose preservation over obedience. I imagine him sealing the jar, whispering a prayer not to the demiurge or to any emperor, but to time itself. Keep this safe. Now step further back into an even older echo, a book named for a man who was said to walk with God until he was no more. The Book of Enoch. It once circulated widely in the ancient world. It inspired. It alarmed. Eventually it vanished from Western canons, surviving in the highlands of Ethiopia and in fragments among the Dead Sea Scrolls, waiting for the modern world to rediscover it. Enoch opens with a rupture in heaven, angels, watchers, behold human beauty and fall. They descend to earth, break sacred boundaries, take wives, and beget giants, the Nephilim, whose roar shakes the valleys. The watchers teach their human lovers secrets, the art of metal and war, the cosmetics of seduction, the etching of spells. Knowledge arrives, yes, but it is knowledge untethered from wisdom. Violence multiplies. The earth cries out beneath the weight of corruption. A flood is announced, not just as punishment, but as cosmic housekeeping, a reset to clean a sky that's been stained. And this is a story of catastrophe, but it's also a map of the cosmos. Enoch is taken on celestial tours past the gates of the winds, to the chambers where the stars are kept, to the prisons of fallen angels awaiting judgment. He watches epochs rise and fall long before our histories begin. Even in the New Testament, a voice echoes. The letter of Jude quotes Enoch, calling out the judgment upon the ungodly. The book mattered enough to be read aloud, enough to be argued over, enough to be put away. Why was Enoch excluded from most canons? Because it teeters between history and myth in a way that early Orthodox leaders found destabilizing. Its angels look too human. Its cosmology is too wild. It was beloved by some early Christians and Jews, but as unity hardened into orthodoxy, it was deemed unsafe. Certain ideas about cosmic rebellion, cycles of cataclysm, the transmission of forbidden arts felt like a door opening onto a terrifying landscape. And yet the Ethiopian church kept that door ajar, preserving Enoch in full while the West forgot it for 1,000 years. When the Scottish traveler James Bruce returned from Ethiopia in the 18th century with copies of Enoch, he carried not just parchment, but the shock of a missing voice suddenly speaking again. Scholars read and recognized faint outlines beneath later traditions, a richer angelology, a mythic prehistory, a pattern of ascent and descent that haunted apocalyptic hopes. Was Enoch suppressed because it was false? Or because it asked dangerous questions about where knowledge comes from and what it does to those who wield it? Consider the pattern forming. The Gnostic Gospels propose a divinity within and a creation shaped by a lesser hand. Enoch tells of angels fallen through desire and humans altered by their gifts, of a reset that reeks of divine despair. These are not polite ideas. They are disruptive. They challenge the straight road of official histories, suggesting that the past is more labyrinth than line. And then there is a book that refuses to even tell us what it is. You know, a manuscript is opened on a green felt table in a modern library. The pages are vellum, supple but strong, traced by a hand that moved with confidence 5 centuries ago. The script loops and flows with unnatural ease, like water that has learned to write. It is a language no one speaks, a language no one can read. We call it the Voynich Manuscript. There are drawings, beautiful, baffling, almost mischievous. Plants that look plausible until they don't. Star charts and zodiac wheels. Pages of bathing women immersed in something like alchemical plumbing. Tiny figures joined by conduits and pools. Fold-out charts, like maps of a city you've never lived in but dream about. Cryptologists have attacked this book. Mathematicians have measured its rhythms. The parchment dates to the early Etsensibides. The pigments match the era. Its words obey patterns like those found in natural languages. And still it won't yield. What is it? A coded herbal from a cloistered intellect? A compendium of a lost botanical tradition? A scientist's notebook from an age before science wore a lab coat? A hoax. The last possibility has been floated for a century, but if it is deception, it is one executed with impossible discipline, 1,000 tiny choices made to mimic the hidden structures of human speech. Its text breathes in syllables that fall and rise with strange regularity. It feels intentional, like a door that knows you're knocking. The theories proliferate because the book invites them. Some see in it a bridge to unknown women's knowledge, midwives and healers passing secrets in a male-dominated world. Others read it as a cipher crafted by a court where secrets could kill. A few reach for the sky, whispering about visitors and messages from beyond. But the most compelling truth may be simpler and more unsettling. The Voynich Manuscript stands as proof that there are forms of knowledge that can survive without us. It is an island of meaning unmoored from our maps. It looks back at us and keeps its composure. What unites the Gnostic codices, the Book of Enoch, and the Voynich Manuscript? Each sits at the margins of established canons. They complicate neat narratives and suggest that past communities explored ideas beyond today's categories. When texts like these resurface, scholars and institutions often debate how best to contextualize, interpret, and share them. Suppression rarely announces itself. It looks like a list: permissible books on one side, dangerous ones on the other. It looks like a fire in a courtyard where the ash carries the letters into the night. It looks like a scholar deciding not to publish a discovery because of funding or fear. It looks like private collectors locking away troves in climate-controlled rooms, while scholars beg for a glimpse. But the search continues. A villager lifts a shovel and finds a jar. A Bedouin boy, idly throwing stones in the Judean desert, hears the crack of pottery and pulls the first of the Dead Sea Scrolls into the daylight. In Oxyrhynchus, Egypt, archaeologists pull from the sand an avalanche of Greek papyri, scraps of poems, gospels, letters home. In monasteries, conservators peel back palimpsests, parchment scraped and reused, revealing layers of forgotten text beneath medieval prayers. Multispectral imaging resurrects ink invisible to the eye. Suddenly, Archimedes' lost treatises step into the modern world. Suddenly, an erased philosopher whispers again. The past keeps talking. We learn to listen better, and as new texts surface, so do new dilemmas. Who should steward them? The place where they were found, the communities connected to their makers, and or the institutions best equipped to preserve and share them? If a manuscript was removed a century ago and now rests in private hands, what does a just path forward look like? Our shared heritage bears many fingerprints: administrators, intermediaries, collectors, caretakers, scholars, and the record is complicated. The ethics of discovery call for humility. The hunger to know can sometimes resemble the urge to acquire. The boundary between safeguarding and overreach has at times blurred. Yet what is the alternative? To leave knowledge in the ground, silenced by dust and time, or to liberate it and gate it again behind glass and paywalls? Every decision about a manuscript is an argument about who gets to read, to interpret, to belong. The most radical act we can commit in the face of such history is to keep asking questions, to keep searching out multiple voices, to embrace complexity over comfort. And let's return to our guiding question: why do these books vanish? The easy answer is that they are false and therefore disposable. The harder answer is that they are dangerous and therefore indispensable. Dangerous because they remind us that truth is larger than the edicts of any council. Dangerous because they give language to experiences of the sacred that bypass institutions. Dangerous because they force us to confront the possibility that the past is richer, stranger, and more fractured than we want it to be. But there is a deeper thread to each of these texts. Nag Hammadi's sparks of inner divinity, Enoch's cosmos humming with moral consequence, the Voynich's serene refusal asks us to reconsider what knowledge actually is. Is it a set of conclusions agreed upon by the powerful, or is it the ongoing inconvenient conversation we have with mystery? Knowledge that cannot be burned has a habit of becoming myth. Myths that cannot be explained become superstition. But between those poles, there is a place where humans meet the unknown and write it down. That place is dangerous. That place is sacred. Imagine again that sealed library. Imagine the hands that made it, the scribe dipping a reed into ink, the young monk learning to form letters, the woman who knew which herbs soothed childbirth pains and which stopped a fever, the traveler carrying a scroll across borders, tucking it into his cloak when soldiers passed. Their voices are not lost. They are waiting, and each time we lift a page, we join them. There is risk in looking. You may find that the stories you were taught to trust are not lies, but they are incomplete. You may find that heresy sometimes means hope that threatens someone's control. You may find that silence is not absence, but strategy. And you may find, if you listen closely, that the most forbidden manuscript is not in a vault at all. It is you, your mind, your capacity to hold competing truths without rushing to kill one of them. Stand with me before the jar in the sand, before the watcher's flight, before the unreadable book on the table. Breathe. These are not relics designed to flatter our modern superiority. They are mirrors, and they will ask you questions in return. What power do you give others to decide what you read? What ideas do you hide from yourself because they strain your belonging? When a story does not fit, do you bury it? Or do you let it change you? Some texts are cursed not because they carry magic, but because they carry memory. Memories of alternate worlds that might have been, of paths we chose not to walk, of doors we nailed shut. Curses can be broken. A sealed jar can be opened. A canon can be questioned. And what emerges is not chaos, but the old human right to wonder. So read bravely. Seek widely. Treat every claim, including this one, with the respect of a challenge. If the victors wrote the monuments, the defeated wrote the margins, and sometimes the margins are where the soul of a civilization hides. This is why we descend into vaults and deserts and attics, not to dethrone truth, but to free it from a throne. And when you leave this room, remember, the past is not asleep. It is awake, watching who we decide to be. The books they tried to bury are not just artifacts. They are invitations to doubt, to learn, to expand the field of what you believe is possible. If you accept, the Mystery Archive will be waiting, where the forbidden shelves are always within reach, and every page you turn is a question whispered across centuries, asking if you are brave enough to answer.